and go. Okay, we're going to look at chapter 8. So this is, while there's a lot of action in this chapter, it's actually quite pivotal. So if you're going to be chapter 8 in there, and yours is on page, if you're in the 535, yeah. So as we saw last time, they had to deal with Achan. We're probably not going to get through the chapter, but we'll see some very interesting things. Vayomer Hashem al Yehoshua, al tirav al techas kach imcha eitz kol am hamilchama v'kum alei ha'ai re'ei nasati bedecha es melech ha'ai v'esamo v'esiro v'es artzo. So this is Hashem speaking to Yehoshua. And again, this is the second attempt to conquer. This is in the margin says the second attempt to conquer AI, which is the big topic in the news. Everybody's trying to figure out how to deal with AI. I wonder what Chet GPT would say about this chapter. I don't know. And by the way, I have never ever once looked at Chet GPT, never asked Chet GPT to do anything. It's not, it's something I'm not interested. Anyway, so Hashem says Yeshua, and he says Al tirav al techas. Now this is an interesting phrase, because sometimes when you see phrases, you're like, wait a minute, I've seen that before. So and exactly, and I'll answer exactly what you were thinking, because in Parashas Vayelech, in the end of Devarim, so it's in almost at the end of the Chumash, when Hashem says Moshe calls Yehoshua, and he's sort of starting to install him as the leader. So it's in Perek Lamed Aleph in Devarim. So it says, Vayikra Moshe Yehoshua v'yomer elav le'enei kol Yisrael chazak ve'ematz. Moshe calls to Yeshua, and he says in front of everyone, again, he says, look, you have to be strong, chazak ve'ematz, which we saw several, I think we said was 11 iterations of that phrase in the beginning of Yehoshua. Ki ata tavo es ha'am hazeh al ha'aretz asher nishba Hashem lavosam l'seis lahem v'ata tanchilena osam, which must be very hard for Moshe to say, even this word, because you're going to bring them into the land that Hashem promised to our forefathers to give it to them. You're going to inherit it with them, meaning you and not me. V'Hashem hu ha'olech lefanecha hu yiyeh imach lo yebecha v'lo yazveka lo sira v'lo sechas. He uses the exact same phrase. Hashem is the one that walks in front of you. He's going to be with you. Okay, he's not going to leave you alone. He's not going to forsake you. Lo sira v'lo sechas. Don't be afraid. Don't be dismayed. Okay, here does he use the same translation? I hope it's the same company. He says, do not fear and do not lose resolve. So it must be different translators, the one who did the Art Scroll Navi, the one who did the Art Scroll Talk. Okay, but in other words, borrowing from that same phrase, when Moshe has to tell the people that Yeshua is the one who's taking over, and this is really happening, so that indicates that this is a pivotal moment in Jewish history. It seems like every chapter is a pivotal moment, but this is a pivotal moment, and we're going to see why in a few minutes. Okay, so he says, take with you kol am milchama. Again, the word that screams out at me is all of the nation of war.
Have you taken this before?
Yes, remember before when they went to Ai, the spy said, oh, just send a couple. You don't have to send everybody. He said, just send a couple of thousand. You don't need everybody. We're going to see the difference here. By the way, the word al tirav al techas, Yeshua himself uses it in later on, but he also used it in the very beginning of the Sefer. He says, when you're talking about Moshe, halot tzivisicha chazak ve'ematz al tirav al techas. Similar phrase, like don't despair. But the tirav techas is found earlier in Devarim. Okay, so he says, you're going to go take all the people of war. You're going to go see Ai, because look, I have given into your hand the king of Ai and his people and the city and his land. Now, this is Hashem speaking to Yehoshua, telling him, listen, we had a setback. You took care of what you had to take care of. You got rid of the evil player and all of his stuff. You took care of business. And I said that if you'll do that, I'll be with you, not to worry. And Hashem is reassuring him. So he says, but trust me, I've given Ai over into your hands. Now, what we're going to see as a big contrast is, whereas Yericho, the people didn't really do much. They were not really involved in that. They walk around a few times, they sang songs and made noise with the shofar. But here, you're going to see a lot more of human involvement, which again is the very transition here of this chapter, which is why it's so pivotal. And that's why the al tirav al techas, because we're saying this is a bit of a paradigm shift, yet another one whereas everything was being done by God, here, God is always doing. God's always involved, but kind of stepping into the background a little bit where there's much more human involvement. And we always have to find that delicate balance between when we accomplish things, how much credit do we give to Hashem, or whether we see Hashem's hand directly or not. And I'm sure that every single person, hopefully for good, but even sometimes when we go through challenges and difficult things, that we can try to see Yad Hashem. That's called hashgacha pratit, or as we say in French, hashgacha pratis. So when that the challenge is seeing Hashem while it's happening, but perhaps even more so after things happen, and saying, "Oh, I was there." So I'm sure we have moments of providence in our lives where we could say, "Oh, if I hadn't to walk into that store, I never would have seen that girl. I never would have asked her out. I never would have married her." Like that. Or and then there's what
all the
9/11 stories. If I hadn't missed a train, but then you have to what about my husband who did make that train?
No.
And so that's a little harder. And I don't know. I am unbelievably inspired. So this Rabbi Leo D, who's become a superstar overnight, and I don't know where he has the strength and the koach to speak. He spoke the head of the Mizrahi sort of Congress convention after Yom Ha'atzmaut, and he led off. And today actually there's a picture circulating of his two daughters that survived. They went and they visited the woman who received their mother's heart. There's a picture of them listening to their mother's heartbeat, and someone it saved her life. It's so, I already have an arrangement to meet with him over the summer when I'm in Israel. I have a connection to him. So, but wow. So some people are able to find hashgacha easier than others can. And others have difficulty when they have even what might appear to be minor struggles. I'm like, oh, why does this happen to me? I don't know. But that's very much at play in the transition of this chapter. So he says, look, I've given I've given you the king, the nation, the city, the land. You're going to do to Ai and to its king like I did to you, and it's funny, as he says, as you did to Yericho. See, even God has humility. What did Yeshua really do? He just followed instructions, and he did what he did. They walked around in circles, and they didn't lay a hand on anybody, right? So Hashem, and by the way, this is the notion of the concept of imitatio Dei, that mahu afata, that Hashem is compassionate, we have to be compassionate. Hashem visits the sick, we have to visit the sick. Hashem visits the mourner, we have to visit the mourner. Hashem clothes the needy, we have to clothe the needy. So the same way, Hashem is humble, we should also be humble, because Hashem, because no, you would expect to say, and you're going to do to I, oh, by the way, like I did for you. But he's like, no, like you did for Yericho.
They're very angry at one of her teachers, so that's what I told her as she went into school this morning. I said, you have to be like Hashem, and you have to just forgive him.
Yeah, it's hard. Forgiving is hard. It's very hard.
And utilize your acting skills and pretend like you're not angry at your teacher, because that won't go well.
Yeah. It's especially with kids, it's like, oh, but I'm like, do you want to be right? You want to be happy? And you're going to take to Yericho and to the kingdom. The difference here, though, is Hashem says to him, but you're allowed to take spoils and the animals for yourselves. Make an ambush from the rear of the city. All right, so we're going to see this whole plays out, a whole tactical maneuvering in warfare, as we're going to see. But the first thing, because you ask, well, why here would you say they could take spoils, and in Yericho they couldn't?
And what did they do to the Malka?
Malka means Hamelach Shalah.
No, in Yericho.
Oh, I mean, I guess they got rid of them. I don't know, they we're not. This is not roses and unicorns here. And they just sent them away, and they live peacefully and they coexist in that. It's not like that. They killed a lot of people. So why? So that's something to bear in mind, but it very much plays into this theme of the transition, because perhaps, and not perhaps, it is, and this is what the Mefarshim say, is that because Hashem exclusively and solely handled the Yericho, so that's God's bounty. Don't touch it. But here, as we're going to see, since the people themselves were involved, now you could take part of the bounty. Okay, and it's subtle, but it's very, very important. Okay, and this begins again. This is yet another step in sort of beginning their real life, whereas they lived this miraculous existence in the desert for so many years, and then they miraculously cross over and they slowly start to come of themselves. The first battle was entirely miraculous. This battle is not as miraculous, even though we're going to see very much Yad Hashem, but we could see it as the reader, but perhaps the people themselves, and you'll see why in a minute. So, Vayakam Yehoshua. Yeshua gets up, again, as the leader. He's like the Acharai. V'chol am ha-milchama la'alos ha'ai. And he took the entire nation of battle, meaning the soldiers, to go to Ai. Vayivchar Yehoshua 30,000 ish giborei hachayil vayishlachem laila. So he picks how many? 30,000 warriors. Now, remember the last time they were told to take 2,000 to 3,000. He listened to the advice of the spies. You don't need to send everybody. Just send a couple thousand will be fine. Oh boy, did they mess that one up. Okay. And he takes 10 times the amount. Yeshua is saying, okay, I'm not taking any chances this time. We're not going to mess around. And he sends them at night. More. And this is what he commands them. So Yeshua very much takes charge. Hashem told him what he has to do, but he didn't just say, oh, go and be there and Hashem's going to be with you. No. He actually has to come up with a tactical plan. And Yeshua himself leads them. He's right there with them. And he says, Re'uatim orvim la'ir ma'acharei ha'ir, al tarchika min ha'ir ma'od, v'hiyisem kulchem nechonim. You're going to ambush the city from the rear. Don't be too far from the city, and everybody has to be ready. Nechonim, we said it we're going to say it on Shavuos. V'hayu nechonim laboker. You have to be prepared for the boker. No, I guess nachon means nachon. Like, okay, you're okay. Proper, yes, correct. But it means you have to be correct. You have to come correct. Va'ani v'chol ha'am asher iti nikrav el ha'ir. Notice the strong, dominant first person here. Va'ani, I, all the nation asher iti, that is with me, will come close to the ear. And we're going to approach them just like we did the first time. And then what's going to happen is we're going to run away. They're playing chicken with them, or you're going to see the old bait and switch. Nasnu is, we've seen it a number of times in Tanakh. The word nasnu means to run. Right? Vayanusu v'pnei b'nei Yisrael is the same we had in Beshalach. So here it's going to happen. It says we're going to approach. They're going to come out, and we're going to run away, and they're going to run after us until we have drawn them from the city. And they're going to say, "Oh, look! Remember the last time they came? We chased them out. They're doing it again, and we're going to run." It's a trick. Va'atem takumu me'ha'orei v'horashtem ha'seir. And you're going to rise up from the ambush, and you're going to drive out the people that are left in the city, and Hashem will deliver the city into your hand. And when you grab the city, what's the first thing you have to do? It's very violent. Burn it to the ground. Tatzitu is a very strong word for burning. And he says, but kidvar Hashem ta'asi, because this is what Hashem wants. Re'ut sivisi yaschem, look, I am commanding you. In other words, it's possible that people are like, wait, isn't this a little extreme? I mean, that's my read into it. The whole question of God giving orders, I was just following orders. At what point do we, so this is quite biblical, and people who read this, I think it's supposed to make you uncomfortable, that nothing, war is ugly, as we saw that as we're preparing for these chapters, and it's never going to be easy. And the Gemara says that Eretz Yisrael is niknes b'yisurin, that Israel is acquired only with great suffering, which is something that we live, ad hayom hazeh. There were missiles fired this morning in the south, and already warnings going up. They just gave the all clear, but still, I mean, you never know when somebody gets a little annoyed and like, oh, let me fire off a few salvos. That's just the kind of the reality of what they live with. But he says, this is what I'm commanding you. So Vayishlachem Yehoshua vayelchu ala ma'arav. So Yeshua sent them, and they went to the ma'arav. Doesn't mean with an ayin ma'arav to the west. It means ma'arav, like orev is to be an ambush. Vayeshvu bein Beit El uvein ha'ai miyam lo'ai. And they went between Beit El and Ai to the west of Ai. Okay, because remember we looked at the map. Ai, Beit El, and then to the west is Vayelan Yeshua balaylahu b'toch ha'am. I love this phrase here, is that Yeshua then, he encamps with the people, b'toch ha'am, right? And the lady said, b'toch ha'am ani noshevet. I am amidst my people. Yeshua is not an aloof leader. He is mitten drennen with the troops. He spends the night with them. Okay, he's your whatever figure you want to use, but certainly in our military here in this country, we don't often find that the generals are on the front lines. In Israel, and perhaps this is the model they follow, it's always, again, I mentioned that the battle cry is acharai, is after me. Vayashkem Yeshua baboker. Of course, we have the requisite phrase that Yeshua gets up in the morning in Pasuk Yud. Whenever it says Vayashkem, means he got up first thing in the morning. You want to perform the mitzvahs of Hashem and the commandments with alacrity, even though as challenging and uncomfortable they might be, like Avraham with the Akedah. Vayifkod es ha'am. And normally Vayifkod means that you count. But here, so they use the word inspected, and that's what the Mefarshim say is, like we have a general inspects the troops before they have to go out for maneuvers. My whole life, my parents were both in the military, so most of my life growing up, my parents were in the reserves already. Not a lot of active duty, but there were times they had to go on active duty. Usually, it was a couple of weeks during the year. At some point, they would ship overseas, sometimes together, but they would ship overseas somewhere, or I don't know, some base somewhere. Or my father would go every other weekend. Because he was a doctor also, so he would go to West Point often and do examinations, or he was command of a station hospital in Long Island. When he would land on active duty, I always asked, like, Dad, so what are you doing? He's like, oh, we're doing maneuvers. I'm like, okay. I just accepted that as okay. Where's your dad? He's on maneuvers. I love the fact that my parents were in the military. It was a very, very cool thing. And when we used to have father-son learning day in yeshiva in high school, so when I went to MTA, I'm not sure they will admit that I went there, but I went there. And so like one Sunday a year or 2 Sundays a year, like the fathers would come in and go to Shiur with the sons, because there was no English on Sundays, just Shiur. And your father would come in. So my father always came in uniform. For my brother and for me, he always came in uniform. I think it was an intimidation tactic for the. They had some interesting nicknames for us, because they would say, you're not straight. I'm going to go. I'm telling the colonel. I'm telling the general. But it was very, very impressive. And so Yehoshua, he Vayifkod, which has many uses throughout Tanakh, but here it means from a military point of view. Vaya'al hu, who's leading? Who? He goes up. Viziknei Yisrael lifnei am ha'ai. He goes first, before the people. Now, by the way, what's noticeably in this battle, we're about to go into battle, what's noticeably not mentioned or not present? There's no shofars, there's no kohanim, right? There's no ark. They're not bringing out the Ark of the Covenant and saying, this is people going out to battle, okay? And the battle people, the people of war who are with him, they went up and they came before the city. And they encamped to the north of Ai. And there was a valley that's between them and Ai. Gai or Gay, usually depending if you're doing for smichut, but Gai is a valley. So we say, like, for instance, Lashon Hara Lamed Hey, fill in the rest of the sentence. Lashon Hara Lamed Hey. Right, but we say go to Gehenna.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, well, go to Gehenna the easy way. What's Gehenna? Gehenna is Gehinom,
Gay
Valley of Hinnom. So if you're standing, let's say, outside the gates of the old city, or particularly let's say like Sharash boat, and you look down into like Silwan over there, like that's the valley, that's the Gay Ben Hinnom.
That's where they go from?
No, that's Azazel. That's something else. But yes, so Gehinom, the valley of Hinnom. So we have all these different valleys you have in Israel. Israel's full of valleys in these types of places. But so that Gehinom, Gehenna. But it seems to be like a horrible place of whatever, and so that's where we get the term. It's funny. It's one of those things like you hear it all the time. You're like, oh, I didn't. Oh yeah, that makes sense. Which is a term that we hear all the time, but it's actually just it's a name of a place. So they're in the valley. There's a valley, and then here it is. He takes about 5,000 men. Vayasem osam orev bein Beit El uvein ha'ai miyam la'ai. Then he takes 5,000 men and he sends them to lie in ambush between Beit El and Ai to the west of Ai. So there's a north, there's a valley, and then to the west. You see what's happening here? Okay. If you've ever seen, here we go. Here's an obscure movie reference of the day. Not a movie I recommend watching because it's very, very violent. But if the movie Gladiator, which apparently they're doing a remake or a sequel or a prequel or something. Russell Crowe's got to be like 109 years old now. I don't know. But that's, of course, if Nebuch, the biggest news today, if the Hollywood writers don't go, if they go back to work, Gavald, the evening comedy shows are going to be on strike. Oh, yeah. Well, how are we going to survive? But in the beginning of that, when he's battling for Caesar and he's the lead general, Maximus, they show him where they have a battle line, and then he and his men, his select men, they outflank the enemy. And when they create this distraction, then they go after the enemy, and that's how they defeat them. Okay, so this is a similar thing. So you have 30,000, so 25,000 are going to come, and then they're going to run away, and the other 5,000 are going to do what they have to do. Okay, special operations unit. Okay, this is the makor of special units in the Israeli military. Okay. Vayasimu ha'am es kol ha'machana asher mitzvon la'ir v'es ha'kevo miyam la'ir vayilch Yehoshua b'layla hu b'toch ha'emek. The people that got ready in the entire camp, which is the north of the city, and they want to ambush and the ambush party was in the west. So Yehoshua then he went into the midst of the valley. Again, Yehoshua leading firsthand. Vayikir os melech ha'ai, and then we're on 14. Vayikir os melech ha'ai ve'emaharu. Vayashkimu v'yetzu anshe ilikras Yisrael mechama. Hu v'cholamo lamo eid lifnei ha'arava. V'hu lo yada ki oriv lo macharei ha'ir. And as soon as the king of Ai saw this, he's like, oh yeah, I've seen this movie before. So the people of the city, they hurried up. They got up early. They went to go out to chase the Israeli people in battle. He says, hu v'cholamo, all his people, at the appointed time, Lifnei ha'arava, before the plain. Again, these are terms that we use today. Arava, gay, valleys, plains, all these types of things. Now, la mo'ed means a fixed time or a set time. In other words, this goes exactly according to plain. When we talk about chagim, we use the term mo'adim. We say mo'adim l'simcha. Mo'ed or va'ad. A va'ad is a meeting place or a meeting that takes place. Mo'ed means something that's set in time that we know when it's going to be. So in other words, exactly according to plan, this is what happened. They took the bait, they see them, and he didn't know, of course, that the ambush waits from behind the city. Vayinagu Yehoshua v'chol Yisrael f'neihem vayanusu derech hamidbar. Then Joshua, Yehoshua, and all of Israel. What is Yinaga'u? Naga. They were afflicted. So I love here, even in the Art Scroll translation, this is great. They put in quotation marks because you know how we talk in quotation marks. Kids do this. Oh, I'm studying.
Here they said we're beaten.
Does it say what?
We're beaten.
Does it say in quotation marks? See that? Because it's speaking tongue in cheek. There's a great Friends episode also. Fled, yes, here also. See? Oh, there you go. So if you ever watched another great Friends,
yeah,
you watch Friends? Oh, It's good. It's got Seinfeld's also good. Friends, there's one episode where Joey doesn't know how to use this right. And he doesn't. How's that right? You have to review. Nick at night. It's like a salad, like you can't fall asleep. It's like it's just always on, and it works. So here the Joshua and all of Israel were beaten before them, and they fled towards the wilderness. Okay, and Vayizaku kol ha'am asher ba'ai lirdof achareihem v'yidifu acharei Yeshua v'yinataku min ha'ir. And the people that were left in Ai, they said, "Oh, you know what? We're gonna chase after them because this is what we did last time." They chase after them, and guess what? They were all drawn away from the city. Velonish. Now, this I don't understand maybe it's a lack of tactic. Maybe they've never been attacked before, or maybe they were overconfident because of what happened last time. But Velonish ar ish ba'ai ubeit el ashol yatzu acharei Yisrael vayazvu ha'ir petucha vayidifu acharei Yisrael. No one remained, not a single man remained in Ai or Bethel that didn't go forth after Israel, and they left the city exposed. Let's see that they actually use the word petucha, completely wide open. Into the great wide open, and they chased after Yisrael. It's Tom Petty, by the way. Vayomar Hashem El Yehoshua. So now Hashem says to Yeshua, "Netei bekidon asher biyadecha el ha'ai, ki biyadecha tenena." Then Hashem says, reach out with your spear that is in your hand. Right? What's the modern day translation of the word kidon? Is there with a chaf? A kidah with a kuf is is also like a what?
לקוד זה להשתחוות. לא יודעת איך אומרים באנגלית.
Romach. Spear. Okay. Here we go. It's not often we get these. This, right? This has like 4 words in it. This is the, it's 2 volumes in one, 768 pages. Okay, let's see if it has that. Let's see. Yeah. Kidon with a kuf. Alkali, yes. The 3-volume one? Yeah. And then of course for Gemara, you have the Jastro. Okay, and then you have to figure out how you spell this with, let's see. Kidi, kad. No. Maybe it's with a yud. I don't know.
כן, same yud.
Kidon. In modern Hebrew is a lance or a spear. With a kuf, I think it's related. I don't know a lot of Hebrews. I was absent this day. Kuf.
זה דקר, לא
דקר, yeah.
דקר, שם עצם.
Yeah.
יש לך רומח, חרב, דקר, כידון, זה הכל בסייף.
Exactly. They're all related, but I think with a kuf also.
כידון בקוף? לא.
No?
במה השתמש אהוד בן גרה ועגלון? מה הוא החזיק שם?
יד שמאלי.
כן, אבל במה הוא דקר אותו? מה הוא הרג אותו?
Oh, you see, that's funny. Huh? I forgot. We have to look up the word there, but so in the Mefarshim, they say romach.
כן.
Or the Targum says rumcha. And we'll see it says the Mitzudat David or Rashi says like to make a siman, which is a very important phrase. Hold on to that. But Romach, we know the first time we saw Romach was with the original shish kebab in the Torah. Pinchas and just very graphic descriptions. Maybe laugh. Good.
She must have missed that part.
No, it's good. Yes. I love it. He says, okay, so he says, but so when you see the word Hashem says to Yeshua, Netei b'chidon, stretch out the spear, okay? Oh, very good, very good. So in other words, what did Hashem tell Moshe? Netei with what? Mateh. So the mateh of the shepherd has now been transformed to the sword of the warrior. That's the transition. You see it? It's beautiful. This is the way the modern Mepharshim look at it. I know Rabbi Hatton writes this in his volume, and it is absolutely pouring right now. I can't believe that. And like we didn't have enough. That imagery of going from the simple shepherd chasing after his Shepsela, and now he becomes the leader of Israel, but he still uses this staff to split the sea, all the makot. And now Hashem says, raise your sword. But that's always the way they signify everything. Everyone, every leader, every movie you've ever seen, every warrior battle before they had guns, when they had a sword, the person leading on the horse would always wave. That's how they knew when to go. Right? Okay, we're going to come back to this, and this is why this is so important. V'ha'arev kam mehiramim kamo, v'yarutzu kinitos yado v'yavo avri elakaduha, v'yamaharu v'yatzis hosa'ir ba'esh. Uy vavoy. So then the orev is not orev oyev. We say it in Tfilas Haderech, we use this word. Mikaf kol orev v'chol oyev. We're trying to save ourselves from every possible ambush. The ambushers, they quickly got up from their place. They ran. Okay, when he saw that Yoshua stretched forth his hand, the imagery of stretching the hand, an outstretched arm with Moshe Hashem and now Yoshua, and they came to the ear and to the city, and they destroyed it, and they quickly burned it with fire. They burned it down.
They had to. Had they not burned it, well, who were they conquering? The women and children? And this way they see them far away.
So that's exactly what happens. Look at the next pasuk. Vayifnu anshe ha'ay achareihem vayru v'hinei ola ashan ha'ir hashamayma v'lo haya b'hem yadayim lanush zohena v'hena v'amanas lamidbar nepech el rodev. So what happens? That's exactly it. The men of Ai, they turn behind them and they, we got duped. We got pickpocketed. Oh, they pulled a fast one on us. They saw the smoke of the city. They didn't have strength to go this way or that way. Then the people that fled to the wilderness, now they turn on the pursuer. Okay? So the 25,000 now can turn around and they can attack those that were pursuing them. The pursuers become the pursuees, if there is such a word, pursuant to the English language. V'Yoshua b'chol Yisrael ra'u ki l'chad ha'orev es ha'ir v'chi'ala ashan ha'ir v'yashuva v'yakuas anshe ha'ai. And Yoshua and all the people of Israel, meaning the battlers, they saw that, you know what, the ambushers destroyed the city and they saw the smoke. They went turn around and now they beat the soldiers of Ai that were chasing them. And then those that were in the city, they went from the city. And then what happened? That they're in the midst of the Israelite forces. They're caught in the middle. They're ambushed now on both sides. They're ambushed from the people that burned the city and the 25,000 that turn around. Batavach, what's the first time we have the word? This is a great trivia question. Tanakh trivia question. Where does the word batavach appear? You know it. You just don't know that you know it, right? It's not in a battle sense though. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it's in chapter 15 of Genesis.
Bereshit.
כן. בראשית. ויאמר השם אלוקים במה ידע כי ראשונה, ויאמר אליו ככלי עגלה משולשת ועז משולשת ועל משולש בתור וגזל ויקח לו ויוותר אותם בתווך. The Brisbane HaBesarim, chapter 15 of Bereshit, when Hashem made the covenant with Abraham, and he says, take the 3 heifers, the 3 goats, the 3 rams, a turtle dove, a young dove, and a partridge in a pear tree. And he says, and he cut them all in the center. He didn't actually take the partridge in the pear tree. I added that. But he says he cut them all. Batavach means mamish, the center. It's a very emphatic word. I don't know the word tavach. You won't say emtza, but tavach is like straight down the middle. In other words, this army is now, they're besieged on both sides. They're going to be sliced in half. They're going to be really, really in trouble. And then it says, "Vayaku osam al bilti hishir lahem sarid ufalit," and he hit them. Correct, that there was nobody left. And then, by the way, this phrase also hishir lahem sarid is also a phrase that should be familiar. Again, when I read this, I underline it and I write in the margins the references. I'm writing my own parish on Sefer Yoshua, which means it's just notes that where to reference. But in Bamidbar, I'm sounding like I'm so smart. I know I recognize the phrase and I have to look it up. Sometimes I use that if you use the Tanakh app, by the way, the Rusty Brick Tanakh app is great because you can do a search for a phrase. I'll give you everywhere Tanakh in a second. It is I don't know, awesome. So in Chaf Aleph in Bamidbar 21:35 in Chukas, and let's see what the context is when they're doing battle with Og and battle with Sichon, and it says after the battle of Og, Vayaku Osov Esbanav Eskolama Ad Bilti Hishir Lo Sarid. Again, the same like when they battled Og, right? It doesn't say Palit. We have other places of Palit, but here the Hishir, but the word Hishir Lahem Sarid, and also in beginning of Devarim 3:3 in Devarim. In 3:3 in Devarim, which is still Parshas Devarim, and there it says, Hashem gave us Og Melech HaBashan and Kolma Vanakir Ad Biltihi Shi'ir Lo Sarid. Again, the same like in other words, but that's in other words, that's an effective, conclusive, and decisive victory. That there was nothing, kind of like what happened in Prudential Center last night to my team. It was not great. It was awful. It was disgusting. I'm sitting there and I'm surrounded by like all these moronic devil fans. It was terrible. I can't have everything. And I had to go home and face my son. He cried himself to bed.
I was gonna say you had to tell him this morning, or he was.
No, he stayed up, but I mean, come on, priorities. But yeah, he cried himself to sleep. And he woke up angry. He was like, he's like, I don't want to go to school. I'm not. Anyway, Vet Melech Ha'ai Tafsuchai. They took the captain of, the king of Ai, they took him alive. By Akrivo Sol Yeshua, they bring him to Yeshua. Vayike Chalos Yisrael Harogas Kol Yishvei Ai Basadeh Bamidbar Short of him Vayiplu Kolam Leficharv Atumam. And when they finished clearing house, and they killed everybody in the desert or the wilderness in which they chased them, and they all died. And they shechted everybody. This is not sugarcoating it.
That's your question. Just I don't know, because war is still war, but we're Jews. We're supposed to be good. Is it considered to be more merciful to be killing everybody than taking captives? Or there's no purpose in captive? Like, I just was trying to understand.
So here, I don't know the rationale behind the order. And the order was to wipe everybody out.
Said it, so this will do it.
Correct. So yet when other people use that argument, it's a God-driven war, fill the name of your God, commanding me to wipe out all the, fill in the blank.
Right.
Infidels or whatever you want to say. Well, that's horrible. We're doing the same thing. But it's in the Bible. That's in my Bible. It's very hard. It's part of hockey stick. Yes, it's very hard. It's very hard to reconcile that with sort of our modern approach to. You're right. War is ugly, and the irony that we need war to make peace. Whatever. Okay. So look, but let's keep going. So they came back and 12,000. So now the first time they only sent 2,000 or 3,000, you can understand why they got chased away. They see a larger force, and they're overconfident that we could chase them, and then they get their what's handed to them, and 12,000 people, not just men, it's 12,000 men and women. And this I love. And Yehoshua does not withdraw his hand that he stretched out until he destroyed all the inhabitants of the eye. They were able to take spoils from the animals.
Such a contrast to
right.
Shlomo, for God's sakes. Shaul.
Right. And also to the Battle of Yericho, which we mentioned. And then here, let's just do one more pasuk. And Yoshua burnt Ai and he made it a mound forever, a wasteland. Now that, by the way, that's the language, Tel Olam, What does Tel Olam mean? Tel, we know what a tail is, like a tail. We like nice tails like Tel Aviv, Tel Shmer, a tail all novel. Oh man, this is good. I mean, I'll be here all week. In the story of what's called an Ir Hanidachat, an entire city that goes astray, and the Gemara in Sanhedrin says it never happened,
Yeah.
right? But still, one of the commandments is that if the whole city goes to worship idols, it says you have to go and you have to destroy the city, and then you have to wipe everybody out, and it says. That if this happens to a city that worships Avodah Zarah, an entire city, you have to wipe out the whole city and you burn everything, even all of the items, and then you have to put in a mound and you have to be Tel Olam and never to be rebuilt. So Tel Olam means that's it. This is never going to be, this is which people have tried to do to us, but never been successful. Okay. So okay, so now there's a lot left in the chapter, which we're going to finish next time. But actually, let's just finish to the end of the paragraph here. So, in Chaf Tes, one more pasuk. So they hanged the king of Ai. Okay, and my father always made sure to make sure that I know that in English, people are hanged. Laundry is hung. That's the proper English usage, hanged. And when the sun sets, and then Yeshua took off his body, his corpse from the tree, and they threw it down, and they put a heap of stones, like, that'll show you. Here's a marker, okay?
For the rest of Kna'am to look at and say, look, here we are.
So in medieval times, when
Yeah,
people heads on a spike,
Yeah.
heads on a spike. Okay. That's the greatest symbol of, okay, you want to mess? Here you go. Take your chances. Now, whereas we saw in the Battle of Yericho, they were not allowed to take spoils. Here they are, because again, we're showing this transition of.
But they followed what Hashem said.
Here they followed.
No,
correct.
both times, though. No.
No, last time we had.
Yericho, they-
We had Achan. Right.
Not
Achan.
everybody.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, not almost everybody,
Yeah.
except for one guy. And here the command was that they're allowed to take spoils. Now, again, the Battle of Yericho was pure God input. This is pure human input. But when you read it carefully and subtly, this shows the transition of Hashem moving from the forefront to the background, because we can never say Hashem's out of the picture. It could be Anochi Aster Aster Panai, Hashem says, I will hide my face, and maybe I won't be as apparent. Okay, so it's possible when you look at the tactical battle, what happens if, let's say, Yehoshua goes in too early with the ambushers, or let's say he goes too late? It's possible they could, the timing has to be just right. And you even have this sort of foreshadowing when it says La Moed, they went out on signal on, just as expected. The Ayites, I don't know what you call them. Apparently they're not so I, but I can go all day like this. The I people went out on cue. How does Yeshua know it has to be timed just perfectly? You're talking about 25,000 people and 5,000 people. Oh, so that's where you look very subtly. Look back at Pasuk Yud Ches. Now, Vayomer Hashem al Yehoshua, Hashem says to Yehoshua, Neteakidon. The people are following Yeshua's order. When he raises his sword, that's when they know to go. But how do you know when? Vayom Hashem said to Yeshua, now's the time. So even though they fought in battle, they had to kill 12,000 people, but to know when to do it, how to do it at the right time, that's a God-given symbol. And even more so, it's further alluded to. I think it's such a beautiful allusion here, is that look at Pasuk Chavav. It seems to be an unnecessary verse. It says, Yehoshua lo heshiv yado asher nata bakidon. Yehoshua never withdrew his hand that was stretched out until they destroyed all the inhabitants of Ai. What does that mean? What, he left his hand raised the whole time? If we're drawing the parallel to Moshe and the Mateh, let's think about and something that Yehoshua was a part of. In the end of Parshas Beshalach, in the end of Parshas Beshalach, when they have the war against Amalek attacks them.
What is hands up
Okay.
and down?
V'haya ka'asher yarim Moshe yado v'gavar Yisrael, v'ka'asher yaniach yado v'gavar aleim Amalek. When Moshe's hands were raised, they were winning, and when they were lowered, they were losing. And then the pasuk says, "V'dei Moshe kvedim v'yikhu evem hayasim etachtav v'yesh ole Aaron v'chur tamchu b'yadav mizeh echad v'hi yadav emunah ad bo hashamash v'yachaloshi Hoshua et Amalek v'et Amalek v'charef." So Moshe's hands grew heavy, so they took a stone and they put it under him. There's a whole Gemara has a question about these stones. The Medrash, Moshe was so tall, they needed these big stones. And it seems like, okay, prop it up. But so the Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah, the very, very famous Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah, which addresses this, and it says, and this is where we have a very common phrase that we have in English, actually comes from the Mishnah, and it says, V'chi yidei Moshe osos oshovros milchama. Did the hands of Moshe osot make, oshovrot break? Make or break actually comes from the Mishnah. It's a direct quote from the Mishnah. Make or break war? No. And it says, rather, what does it mean?
I'm surprised.
As long as they had their intentions klape shemayim, if they directed their intentions towards heaven, Hashem is with them. If not, so here this is a transition from that, but it's drawing from this, is saying, you know what? They're doing battle. How did you know when to go? How do you know what the right symbol is? Yeshua understands that, but it's the transition of now you're going into real life. Yeah, God's always, and that's why God started the conversation. Just like he said to Moshe, don't worry, if Yeshua is going to take over, Al tira al techas, I'll be with you. I'll forever be in your corner. I'm always going to be behind you. Here he's saying the same thing. I'll be behind you. You may not see it. You may not realize it, but now we, the reader, we could see it. But the people, the battle, we had a great battle. And what's the danger of this, though, which we especially experienced it in 1967. 1967, one of the phrases that came out, we took a phrase from the Chumash. We said, "Kochi v'otzem yadi asali esachai lazeh." Look how mighty we are. Look how great we are. We, the few defeated the many, miraculous fashion. Look how who's going to mess with us? And Hashem says, "Okay, I'm going to send you, another war, and we'll see how well you do in the next one." At first. So it's and that's exactly what the Torah warns us is. You have to always see Yad Hashem in everything, even if you can't see it. And therefore, if you have a klape shemayim, and here these are biblical battles, these are of tremendous import. But again, the paradigm shift and the transfer from all God all the time is now subtly changing to, okay, now you have to take. There's no ark, there's no shofars, there's no. You could even take from the spoils. You could take stuff because you earned it. Your hands got dirty, your hands got bloody. Yeah, you deserve to take that. But don't think God wasn't involved. God told Yoshua when to raise his hand, and Yoshua kept it up the whole time. And once it's done, then he lowers his hand. That's symbolic. And you see this, it's unbelievable similarity and imagery. So we'll finish, God willing, next time the aftermath of the war, and then we go on and on, and then next is the Gibeonites and the Givon and the trick they try to play on us. So again, there's lots of action here, but this is really, really interesting stuff. So yes. I will, how are we posting my